My speech is going to be, my name is Leandro Madrazo, I'm a professor here in the School of Architecture at Salle. And my speech is going to deal on this topic, rethinking dwelling, education, innovation, sustainability, the relation between these three elements. That's the topic of the lecture today. So it's going to focus on the work and the experience of these two European projects, which I have been coordinating in the last years. One is A-Place, which is from the Creative Europe program. It's about placemaking, basically, as a topic. It's a learning environment. And the other one has to do with housing. It's called Livable. It's a Marie Curie program that has been running also over 4 years. And together, these two projects highlight the role of collaborative cross-sectoral approaches in shaping inclusive and resilient urban environments. These two projects actually are the culmination of a long time of work here in this school, over 25 years. Myself, with a research group I have been leading here, in the last years, we have been developing a large number of different projects, all of them in a way characterized by these 4 characteristics that I have tried to outline here. They are projects that all of them have tried to, in a way, overcome different kind of boundaries. Boundaries between subjects and disciplines, creating new spaces for learning and collaboration within the school and outside, breaking boundaries between academic and non-academic contexts, bridging the gap between academic and real-world settings, as we can see in the A-Place project. Also, overcoming boundaries between analog and digital practices. One of the characteristics of our research group is that we have the capacity to develop our own tools, our own digital tools to support the pedagogic methodology and the projects we have been involved. And also blending the boundaries between teaching and research. And this is a very important aspect of the work we have done and represented, I think, in the 2 projects I'm going to show. Blending both in knowledge construction processes, enhancing learning through research, and developing transferable skills. A-Place was running between 2019 and 2023. It's composed by a consortium of 9 partners from Europe. They include academic institutions, cultural organizations, and creative practitioners. The purpose of the project was to foster deeper connections between people and the places they inhabit through artistic and community-driven placemaking across 6 European cities. This is the challenge of the project, how to connect these 3 cities in placemaking activities, exchanging knowledge between them. And the objective was to engage residents, artists, students, and policymakers to transform public spaces into meaningful environments that reflect and reinforce local identities. The other project, Ritual, was almost running in parallel. It was running between 2020 and 2024. It was made by a consortium of 10 universities in Europe, plus 12 non-academic institutions. And the purpose of the project was to train 15 early-stage researchers, ESRs, to advance transdisciplinary research and learning to address the challenges of delivering affordable and sustainable housing in Europe. And the purpose of the project was to keep a new generation of researchers and professionals with the tools to co-create housing solutions that are inclusive, environmentally responsible, and socially just. Let's start with the first one. The structure of the presentation, I'm going to introduce the work we have done in the 2 projects, and then at the end I will come to some kind of cross-cutting conclusions between the 2. So A-Place, the aims was to design and implement art center placemaking activities in these 6 cities: Barcelona, Bologna, Brussels, Lisbon, Ljubljana, and Nicosia. The idea was to connect meanings and experiences associated to places across cultural and geographic boundaries and to involve local residents, transient population, artists, and educational staff from high schools to universities in the activities. So this is the diagram in a way that synthesizes the purpose of the project, connecting these cities and these connections, this network of places. It means a network of locations, but also a network of meanings in the activities that we are developing, a network of actors of different profiles engaged in these activities. The consortium, as I said, was composed by 9 organizations from 6 European countries, and there are universities from architecture and urban planning, but also there are community center creators, cultural agents, and all of them were involved in the collaborative activities. So now getting into the topic itself, the notion of place, which is the name of the project, A Place. A place can have two very basic meanings. It's a long discussion, but I have make a schema here, a synthesis of two basic meanings, existential and social. From the existential point of view, we live in places. Existing is being in the world, Dasein, as in Heidegger's terms. From a phenomenological perspective, our being is intrinsically bound to the spaces we inhabit. To live means to live in space. Das Dasein is räumlich, Dasein is spatial, as Heidegger wrote. But on the other hand, there is another concept of place that has to do not with the existence, with the Dasein, but with the social structures. And in that regard, places are more objective than subjective. Places are standalone structures, intangible but real, systems that exist outside subjective interpretation. A place in this sense refers to a position within a larger order, where things as well as individuals can be placed one to another. Mettre en place, in French, put in place, that's the idea of place as an existing structure. Place is a cross-disciplinary concept. The notion of place is a complex concept that appears across many fields, and that's particularly the interest and the value of this concept in this context: geography, philosophy, anthropology, architecture, literature, and more. Place is a location, but it's also an event, an experience, and a social construction. It's a dynamic interplay of physical settings, social interactions, and cultural meanings. Place is a built space, but also an image, an ideal, a symbol. It serves as a repository of memories and personal experiences. It is my place, your place, our place, a place, and a non-place. So the activities we developed around these ideas in this project are basically here for 4 categories: placemaking activities, in particular social and urban context, private and public; cross-disciplinary learning spaces arising from the confluence between artistic practices and learning activities in different levels of education; artistic productions in different formats with different media by creators engaged in the project, artists, but also students, using video, photography, literature, music, and other mixed media; and also festival activities in 3 festivals that were part of the consortium in Nicosia, in Italy, and here in Barcelona. So we use a syntax to name all the activities we did in the project. We use also always the same syntax. A future place, a happy place, a delicious place, a reconnecting place. If you read the book from Jane Jacobs about the life and death of American cities, you will find that these adjectives very much in the book. For Jacobs, so all the spaces have the qualities that can be assimilated to the qualities of experience of space. And that's what we wanted to also to bring here. There are many of these activities. All of them are in the website. So I'm going to show only a sample just to give an idea, but it's plenty of information, as you can imagine, after 4 years of work. All of these teams, there's plenty of activities. You're interested, you can browse in the website. So just to give you an idea of what we did in different cities, a place in Ljubljana, there was a collaboration between high schools and university architecture students who were collaborating in giving a new sense, a new life to abandoned site in Ljubljana. And what they did was to, in a collaborative process, to find out what to do, how to activate those places, transform them into a playground with the collaboration of everybody, all the actors, stakeholders involved. In Bologna, one of the partners decided to extend the office into the public space with a parklet. This was from 2021. And that's what they did, actually extending and using that public space for performances, activities, cultural activities related to the partners' work. In Brussels, the Q11 students and faculty did a project collaborating with homeless people in a shelter in order to give them a sense of belonging by transforming the place where they were living, building their own furniture, recycling and manufacturing everything in workshops taking place in the same shelter. In Lisbon, our colleagues in Lisbon, Nova University, was very much involved in collaborating with neighborhood associations. And what they did in 2 neighborhoods, in this one, it was in Padre Cruz, and what they did was a competition, literary competition for residents of all ages to write a poetry, to write a literary text in order to make a competition that then was awarded, and then the prizes were delivered in a parking lot that was in front of a civic association transformed into a award ceremony. In another neighborhood, the Rego neighborhood, they did another kind of activity with sounds. They were recording the sounds of the neighborhood, collaborating with an artist, with a composer to transform these sounds into compositions, and then they were played, dancing, and with a flash mob in the neighborhood. All of that with the participation of the residents. In Brussels also, a neighborhood was transformed, a playground was created as well with the collaboration of the residents and artists. This was in a very well-known area in Brussels, the Marolles. In Nicosia, they were focusing on planting, on nature, and they did community planting, adopting a plant. They built structures in the public squares to hold all of these plants that were taken care by people. Okay, all of that is a little sample of what we did physically in the different places. But what happened, this project was running from 2019 to 2023. As soon as we started the project, 6 months later, came the lockdown. And particularly in Spain was very extreme. We were closed here several weeks. So there was a critical moment in the project. We just started. It's a project about public space. We cannot go to the public space. So what do we do with the project? So this question happened in many other contexts to many other people in the world. So also in education, how we teach. We cannot go to the classroom. So what we did after a crisis conversation in the group, say, okay, either we cancel the project or we move on. Let's take the limitations, constraints as a creative effort, which is what everybody does in these circumstances with a creative attitude. So let's assume the constraints. So what do? We went online, of course, like everybody. So what we did was a blog first, an activity we call a confined place. That was the activity we did, and we did a blog for contributions about representing the experience of place in that time. We also did open calls for artists to contribute with work in different media about that experience that was for professionals, and also a short film competition about films representing the experience of being in the COVID times. The blog was this one, and then we got many contributions from, and very valuable one actually. I'm always surprised by the quality of these photos that we got in that time. And in the text, we asked for a photo and a text describing a personal experience, how you are living in this period, your experience and close at home. And they were very beautiful photographs. There are only 3 examples, and also very beautiful texts. I mean, there was these special conditions of the COVID, in a way, gave more sensitivity, I think, to all of us regarding the home, the place we were living, and to express that into this media in this case. For professional artists, we gave options of doing interventions in public space where they could, or videos or graphic design, and we gave also some awards. And there were also quite a lot of films presented, 330 films in the first call, and we awarded 3 prizes. And we also did in that time our own environment. That's what we could do here with our research capacities. We decided to create something we call a place mapping, which allowed people in different parts of the world just to share an image and a text about the experience, not only in the pandemic, but in any moment. And this environment is still in place. It got a lot of input from all over the world, and we are still using it. Actually, we did just a few weeks ago a summer school in Korčula in Croatia, and the students use this to represent their feelings of place. So we use in this project different media, as I said, text, objects, performances, photographs, sounds, and videos, sometimes interconnected. These are examples of the competition in Lisbon, where the residents writing by hand, they just put their poetries, their stories, and they share it like this, by hand. And it was read by the committee, and then the awards were given. There were also built structures, objects in different places, built different materials, wood, metal. There were also performances, flash mobs, as I said, dancings, photographs. We did every year a photograph competition for everybody, professionals and non-professionals, and we awarded 3 prizes every year during the project. We also composed compositions, as I said, but not only those ones in the neighborhood, but also other competitions. And we did a lot of videos. Video was a specially used format, and there are very relevant, actually, productions that you can see in our website. So I'm going to concentrate now on the final part of this project in the experience of our research group, in teaching group. We were working in L'Hospitalet, it's a city, a municipality next to Barcelona. And we worked in this city during 4 years. And that was very important to develop a connection and a sense of trust between the municipality, residents, and ourselves in order to develop step by step more and more activities, more and more embedded into the community context. So L'Hospitalet is, as you can see here, is located, actually, you cannot see the difference. Well, you know the area, you see the difference when you go from Barcelona to L'Hospitalet, but it's just the same continuous urban fabric. It's part of the metropolitan area, but it's part also of the city of Barcelona. It has a very high density, higher than the average in Barcelona. It has 21,000 inhabitants per square kilometer, and a population of 260,000 inhabitants, which makes L'Hospitalet the second largest city in Catalonia, with 20% migrants. There's a huge issue as we contacted the community and start to see what are the issues here to deal with. In this project, of course, the issue of integration, the issue of segregation in two senses, segregation in the physical fabric of the city, because the city is an aggregation of fragments rather than a continuous and organized urban fabric, and also segregation in the social aspect, because there are many communities, many different languages, a high percentage of migration, as you can see. So after having the first contact with the stakeholders, the residents, civic organizations, civic neighbors associations, we contacted many people at the beginning. We came out with this strategy, which was to, and this name, a weaved place, means acknowledging that there was this segregation, this division at the physical and social level. Let's try to connect the different fragments. And that was the name of a weaved place came through. So we tried to analyze the built and lived environment together in different activities, and that's what we did over 4 years of work. So what we did was to map the socio-physical territory with different activities. We carried out pedagogic activities in public spaces, and we also did interventions to transform the public space. I'm going to focus on one, just to understand how we integrated the different ones. This was an activity in the third year where we collaborated with high schools, with students between 10, 14 years old, together with our students here in one of our subjects. And we, after many conversations with high schools and the teachers and the faculty, we convinced them to do an activity which was to map their living space, identifying those places that for students were particularly relevant. And to tell a photo and with a little text why this place was relevant for you as a student, as a high school student, 10, 12 years. They did that as an activity in the high schools, and they did that using this environment, a place mapping. So they just provided a photograph and their text saying, this place is relevant for me because here I was coming with my grandmother and blah, blah, here I met my friend. So it was a kind of emotional mapping, which was very relevant because it was an opportunity for students to tell why these empty spaces, they carry meaning, and this meaning to have the generosity to share the meaning through this environment. Then based on that, our students read this description of places and proposed an artistic intervention to visualize those meanings. And these proposals were presented in the public space in L'Hospitalet to the high school students. They were discussed with them. Then based on that discussion, we went further and our students built some constructions, artistic constructions, prototypes that were here assembled in the campus first and then built in the city together with high school students. This is an example of integration of an activity that cuts across different boundaries, different high schools with academia, hands-on activity with learning about the place. So I would say that this is a model that for us came as a good experience that probably, as many activities in placemaking, I say a model, but I guess everybody who is involved in this kind of activities knows that it's very difficult to repeat. Things are unique to the moment, to the stakeholders. So even though this was a good experience after many tries, to say that we can repeat that again, it probably is not possible. It's every project, like every design, is unique in a way. So this is an example of how this works. I mean, after talking to this, following this process, one of the final outputs was this tube. This tube was an expression of a place, a bench, that people say that here they meet with friends from different nationalities. And they say, well, this bench is where we meet with my Moroccan friend, with my Colombian friend, and so on. And then our students, architecture students, got the idea and say, okay, let's make here a monument to communication. So people could talk to each other through this tube, and then there were the different languages that were here spoken in this bench and written in the tube, and you could talk from one extreme to the other in different languages. So we used only one material, which was these pipes. We did first a competition here in the school to see what kind of materials we could use. And after different tries, we decided to use these PVC pipes in different colors and different sections. And this was the only material that was used for all of these interventions. After this experience, I wrote a paper, which actually was presented to the AMPS conference in Focus on Pedagogy 3 or 4 years ago, and to reflect about what we did and to communicate it and to put it into a more academic context. And by doing this exercise, I came across this very interesting article from Schnekloth and Shibli, written in 2000, 25 years ago, which used the concept of emplacing architecture. I found this very inspiring and actually a very excellent term to describe what we did. Because what we did actually was to emplace architectural teaching, and we as architects also emplacing ourselves as mediators or as creators into this community context. So emplacing related to placemaking is an opportunity, as they write, to move beyond expert models, to relocate and embed architecture, to emplace it within a broader human endeavor. So indeed, I think what we try to do, actually then in the paper, I try to represent this idea related to our work with these diagrams. Indeed, what we did here was to put together academic curriculums with community concerns. And in the middle, create a kind of transversal learning space situated in the community, where put together all of these two different realms. In the academic curriculum, on top, what we did here in the school was to connect different subjects in different levels of the program. So we put into relationship design studio with the urban planning studio, with another subject called system of representation. And we try to find activities that connect the three of them in that transversal space. And in the community, we had many conversations with different stakeholders to identify the issues, the spaces that they were a concern for the community. Based on this exercise was absolutely necessary in order to make this weaving, this interlacing, this braiding between the two realms and everybody involved. From the side of academia, what we have to ask ourselves is which competence we want to teach. We are teaching, we are educating people. We don't do activities just for fun. It's just to learn what? To learn how to do teamwork, to then learn other kind of transferable skills. And if we go to the cities, it's just to do something, to improve, to help, to reveal the problems, to help residents to understand their own living environment. All of these activities should have an impact, and the impact in the academic realm is different than the impact in the community. In the community, we expect that people get more knowledge about the place they live in, or they get more a sense of belonging. That's what the purpose of the project is, actually. And in the academia, what we expect, and we wanted to contribute here, particularly in this school, which is an important topic, is this transversality between different subjects, disciplines, across the topic of place. So what we did, I think, and that's the conclusion, the relation with the in-place concept, it really was to in-place all of these realms together, to weave all of these together into these activities. Only at the end of the project, only in the third year, we had enough commitment from the municipality, particularly, to allow us to make a two-day festival in the main public square of the neighborhood. We call it Escultura because in Spanish or Catalan also, the place of the activities is La Plaza de la Cultura. So we're playing with these words and try to make this Escultura, which is also a sculpture. We did a two-day festival with the commitment or participation of many different actors, high schools, students from the high school contacted the elderly home and make photographs of the residents, visualize these people and their biographies with photographs done by them, put by them in the public square. A seniors association make a performance of dancing during one of the days. We had an activity, a workshop for children just freely come by and paint their image of the neighborhood. We had a competition for architecture students from different schools, and the winners were built and placed into the public space. And some of the competitions, some of the awards had as a focus transforming the existing urban equipment, like this bench transformed into an office. We also had a film festival transforming the parking access into a screen wall for the history of the movies of the neighborhood, and also audio activities. This lady here, this girl is just listening the sound of the trees that comes from this pipe. At the end, we did we asked residents to vote what was the best performance, and we gave prizes for that. We represented, at the end of the project, we had to do a reflective assessment of what we did, and we put that into posters, to diagrams. In Brussels, we started to draw this by hand, and then we put it into other formats. What were the activities we did, how they could be grouped in themes, how they could be connected, and all of this exercise was done later on at the end of the project. What activities we did, how they are related to a vocabulary of concepts, how they're related to activities, to techniques that we used, and all of that is part of this book that is available in this address. If you are interested, all the work is collected and explained in this book. It's an online book, which is in Zenodo, and looks like that. Okay, that was a place. Now let's go to the second project, Read Well. Both of them were running in parallel. I was coordinating both of them, apart from other ones. So in parallel, and this one has as a focus housing, in particular sustainable and affordable housing in Europe. And Marie Curie, if you're not familiar with, it's in this case, it's an innovative training network. That means that the purpose is to train PhD candidates with these capacities that are listed here in order to improve their professional capacities and also to innovate in training, which is also a very important aspect. So the purpose of innovative training network is to have high-quality doctoral training, to facilitate mobility and collaboration across sectors, to have an interdisciplinary approach to the topic, in this case, affordable and sustainable housing, to foster academy and industry links, to boost innovation and employability, particularly for the early-stage researchers that are part of it, and to reinforce European research and development. So very high-level expectations. Is a very well grant-funded project. Actually, Marie Curie is probably the top of the European funding, has been until now. So to get one of these grants is not easy, but once you get, gives you a lot of possibilities to do things that otherwise would not be feasible. Housing is the topic, and you look at this barometer, recent barometer from Eurobarometer 2025, housing is the first preoccupation, the first concern for people living in cities and also in towns and suburbs. Far, in the case of city, with a far distance from the second problem, which is job opportunities. So it's not a surprise, particularly in Europe, also in other cities and countries in the world. And this is not just now, this is not in 2025. This has been growing and growing and growing the last years. And already in 2022, there was an important meeting in Nice by the ministers, or European minister responsible for housing, and they make a declaration which was, in a way, very important in order to set a direction and also to define define the problem. Because we are talking about housing shortage, but what is really the problem? Is it only the quantity or other things involved? And I think this document is very, to me, important because it comes from politicians, but in a way, the statements could be subscribed that people in academia, researchers working on the topic of housing. I think I was kind of impressed to see that this in a kind of political declaration. They wrote that providing homes of good quality, and they put quality, situated in mixed-use, compact and dense areas, high-quality living environments close to working areas. They are talking about quality. This is very important. So additional housing should be also integrated in the urban development. So it's not only about housing. It's also integration in the urban development. Increasing affordability is not only a matter of building new housing, also of renovation. This is also very important. And defining together with local and regional authorities strategies to increase the affordable, well-connected, decent, it's also important regarding quality, energy efficient, decarbonized, sustainably designed, accessible and resilient housing situated in socially mixed neighborhoods. Anybody from the research field would subscribe this as an objective, I think. So that was in 2022, and things are moving. And in Europe, we have, for the first time in the most recently appointed commission, a housing commissioner. That's the first time. That's the first, in a way, impulse coming at the European level to try to address politically and socially this problem. But also cities are getting organized. And we just have this recently organized housing alliance of different cities in Europe, trying to lobby and to make their own organized strategy. And Barcelona is part of that. Let's go to the subject matter now. Once we have described the context, let's go to the subject matter, which is housing. Are we talking about housing or are we talking about dwelling? And this is a kind of terminology distinction which is very important. And I would like to bring here again a classical text that probably many people in architectural theory or architectural education know, which I think is still valid and still makes sense today. Building, Dwelling and Thinking from the German philosopher Martin Heidegger. It's part of a speech he gave in 1951 in Darmstadt to architects and engineers. 1951, 6 years after the end of the Second World War, with Germany in ruins. And he said, in that context, in today's housing shortage, today is 1951, residential buildings do indeed provide shelter. Today's houses may even be well planned, easy to keep, attractively cheap, or affordable, I would say today, open to air, light, would be sustainable. But do the houses in themselves hold any guarantee that dwelling, wohnen in German, occurs in them? One of the interesting questions of the article or the speech. Following Heidegger, there is a distinction to be made between housing as building and dwelling as wohnen. Only we are capable of dwelling our world, not only a city, the world, only then can we build. So going against the logic that in order to live, you need first a house and then get inside and get protected, he turned around the argument and said, first we need how to dwell and then only then we can build. This sounds like a philosophical discussion, but you look now from the 50s. But you look now to this website, which is Eco-Conscious Dwelling, which is I just found while preparing this lecture. I didn't know about it. And I think it's pure Heidegger, what they are writing here. Thinking of a dwelling not just as walls and a roof, but as a living, breathing entity intimately connected to the world outside. Dwelling is a gradual process of learning. I think it's very basic and also very much related to what we are doing here in this project. Adapting and integrating sustainable practice into daily life. Eco-conscious dwelling, that's how they call this term in this website, also extends beyond the individual home to encompass the surrounding community and ecosystem. Eco-conscious dwelling is about creating homes that are not only environmentally responsible, but also deeply meaningful and personally enriching spaces that nurture both ourselves and the planet. I would say that these statements are very much aligned with the philosophy that we read in the text from Heidegger, up to date. The other big issue in our project was the tension between affordable and sustainable housing. So if you look only at it in terms of cost, you might think that to make an affordable housing that on top is energy efficient with all the equipment and materials they need and so on, it's a kind of contradiction. It increases the costs, it makes houses not affordable if we start to think on top that they have to be energy efficient and so on. But if you think about sustainability in social terms, of course they are together, the two terms. I mean, to make a housing affordable is not only affordable for today, it's affordable for the next generations. And affordable also, and sustainable for the next generation. Sustainable not only in terms of energy efficiency, but also in terms of social support and social integration. If you do the exercise of opening a concept map on the concept of affordable housing and another one on sustainable housing, you start to see what has to do affordable housing with poverty reduction, with the labor market, with economic development, and start to argue about these connections. And you open another concept map with sustainable housing, and you start to think about energy efficiency, but also about integration of the housing in the environment, in the social and natural environment, quickly you come with points of connection. And as this statement says on these other authors, it's very difficult to separate one from the other. Actually, they are very much connected. So access to good quality, affordable housing is important for promoting a number of social policy objectives, including poverty reduction, equality of opportunity, and social inclusion. The other key word in our project is transdisciplinarity. Affordable and sustainable housing is a complex systemic problem, which needs a holistic transdisciplinary approach. This is not our statement, our invention. This has been repeated already in the last decades in different publications, one of them by Ashraf Salama, who just wrote in 2011 that actually affordable housing requires a transdisciplinary approach. It was written already in 2011. Transdisciplinarity is a topic itself, a complex topic itself. Just to make it short, transdisciplinary research basically has to do with complex problems, wicked problems that need the collaboration of different actors from science and from society, and also problems that do not have a direct answer from existing methodologies, cannot be addressed from an existing discipline. So this was the framework of our activities. Transdisciplinary approach to housing versus dwelling, affordable and sustainable housing. This diagram comes from the proposal we already wrote 6-7 years ago, so this diagram has this time. And this was the framework we proposed for our research in this project, following these ideas of transdisciplinarity and affordability and sustainability of housing. We proposed to structure in 3 areas. This reminds very much a typical diagram of sustainability. It has the same problems, by the way. So we proposed 3 realms: one design, planning, and building, one community participation, and one policy and financing, with different topics. And the idea was that the research of the early stage researchers, by doing their own individual work, they would connect all of these different realms through their activity. The consortium was composed of 10 universities in Europe and 12 non-academic organizations. And these are the non-academic organizations. They were from construction companies to municipalities. All of them represented housing cooperatives, housing associations. And these were the 15 researchers that were selected after an intensive and extensive process of selection that lasted several months. We got like over 300 or 400 applications from all over the world. It was a very competitive selection process. So our goal was to train these researchers with these capacities to approach affordable and sustainable housing with a transdisciplinary approach. That was the pedagogic objective. There are already listed a series of competencies to acquire in this process. These are the list proposed by the Swiss research team on transdisciplinarity. So it's about learning to communicate values, to reflect about self and others, to apply concepts to the real world, to frame complex problems with others, to research in and with the real world, and imagine solutions and their consequences. So very abstract is not domain related. So these competencies could be applied to our problem, housing, but also to medicine or to any other context. So our activities were, in a way, on the challenge we had how to create. Just imagine, we select the 15 researchers. We are in the first year of the project. The first year was only to organize the structure, the pedagogic structure, and the 3 last years for the researchers to do their work. So we spent 1 year designing and creating the pedagogic and research environment. So the complexity of working in this context is very high for everybody, for the researchers and also for the supervisors and the academia and partners, everybody involved. So we had a series of network activities on the top. We were running during 3 years, courses, workshops, summer schools, conferences. We had the individual research project. It's like a PhD thesis that they were doing in parallel that was supposed to end with a PhD thesis after the project. The secondments, which is the stages in the partner organizations during typically a period of 2-3 months, 2 or 3 secondments in the time. And then on top, the PhD programs, because the students, researchers had to be enrolled in the PhD programs to get their dissertation and do also their own courses. So it was very demanding for everybody, for the researchers, but also for everybody involved in implementing this. Of course, the challenge of all of this setting is how to connect all of these things and avoid that each one becomes like a separated world from each other. That people only do the PhD and that's it. Or that people only do the secondments and they don't relate it to their own PhD thesis. So how to connect all of that in meaningful ways, this was a real challenge. How we face that challenge? I mean, we did not have a off-the-shelf methodology to go there and say, let's go this and this and this. We had to learn it by doing. Also, I mean, you don't have the opportunity to create a PhD program about this topic with all of these dimensions. It's the first experience. So how do you do that? There's no models. So we had to, step by step, with vision and with will, building a process. So we had at the start 15 different research projects, which are here listed. And they were already in the proposal, and the researchers were assigned to this project, and then they were developed according to their own research. So the research projects, the main problem was to connect these research projects, actually, how somebody doing a research about the urban planning in a way had something to say or to learn from another student doing something about energy poverty. So in order to create these connections, we created a shared vocabulary. This is fundamental in any transdisciplinary research context to understand each other, to share the vocabulary, what are we talking about in the different approaches. So we created a vocabulary that was constructed by the different researchers. When they were doing their research, they were coming out key concepts that were described and shared with the others across the 3 different research areas. And then also we created a library of cases, of exemplary cases, because the topic, of course, is not new. There are people doing very interesting work in affordable and sustainable housing, built works and non-built, and we have to learn from that. And therefore, we also went to learn from cases and have a library of those cases. So for that, we created, again, in our research group, a digital environment, which is available on the website if you are interested, where we were connecting and documenting all of this work online and finding connections between the vocabulary, the cases, the research projects. All of that is visualized. At the end of the project, we had a vocabulary of all of these terms, over 80 terms that are here defined. We were very careful about curating and editing this content. It's not just a blog style of I put something. They were supervised by the supervisors, final editing. So we were very careful. It was also not only a knowledge construction process, but a learning process about writing. So there were early stage researchers that were starting. Of course, writing is not the first skill you have here, less and less. So academic writing, writing properly, referencing, understandably, that was something that was also learned in the process. As we had this vocabulary during the 3 years, we were creating activities, training activities, to work with that vocabulary as a learning resource, as a tool to construct knowledge. So we asked students when we met physically in some summer school just to look at the words, to discuss them, to create connections between them, to create clusters, and that's what they did. The case library is also online. It has 43 documented projects, also legislation, so on. And finally, another group of work of this connectivity between projects and researchers was the challenges library. Challenges are key issues that can be identified as a result of the research, which connect different stakeholders related to a particular problem. And we have a catalog of challenges that are coming from the research projects, and these challenges also connect the research projects across. All of these activities were done in a blended learning environment. So we were starting a course, for example, online or physically, and then during the next 3 months, the tasks, the activities were performed online, shared online. Then we met again in another location, we discussed the work, and we continued. So it was a blended learning approach. We had 6 courses, 3 workshops, 3 summer schools, and 2 international conferences in the 3 years. In these meetings, we had exercises like this in Miro, just by discussing on the table and seeing what are the connections. This was done repeatedly over the 3 years to see the evolution of the projects. Also, we asked them to find connections between the vocabulary and the case library and discuss those connections. This was done in person on the activities. And at the end of the project, there was almost 90 publications done by the researchers in conference papers, journals, and so on. What I have shown until now is more interdisciplinarity than transdisciplinarity. It means inter means to connect disciplined researchers, but transdisciplinarity means to go beyond academia. To go beyond academia, what is the secondments? The secondments, what they did was to create a report of the secondment to publish in the blog their experience. And also what we did from the beginning was to develop some kind of participatory tools to engage stakeholders into the creation of knowledge together between academia and non-academic partners. This was the first exercise we did with the occasion of the International Social Housing Festival in Helsinki. We organized a workshop there, the Livable workshop, and then we proposed tools in order to engage different stakeholders into reflecting about how to define the problem of housing and how to solve it. And later on, in the different activities, we developed our own tools, our own games, in order to use them later on in real-world scenarios that were done at the end of the project, involving other kind of actors. Just to come to the end of this second part, looking backwards, I mean, as I said, we did all of this in a way on the fly. So we did not have a method, a structure. We had let's say, a rough structure, but not a methodology, how to integrate all of this and how to integrate courses with activities. So it was done step by step. Now we are doing the book. We are finishing the book about the project, and we are looking backwards to reflect, to make a reflective assessment of what we did. And I think we look backwards, I think what we did was, first of all, to put in motion the 15 research projects, to put it in motion. As they were running, they were creating content. And this content was just feeding the vocabulary, the case library, the blog with the secondments. Then we had at certain moments, we had these summer courses, workshops, and so on, where the researchers were coming together, connecting experiences, knowledge, and all of that generated new knowledge that was, again, feeding the repositories on the bottom. All of this process was in the direction of reaching to the transdisciplinarity, reaching the contact with the non-academics that was done in the very end of the project. This is what we are doing now in the book that is in progress. So these are some samples of what we are doing right now. It's just in progress work. We are just trying to describe the process, how the connections between the research projects, some samples of the case library, and also the challenges, how they're related. So this is just part of the book. Okay, that was the second project. And as I said, I'm going to do now a final exercise, going, as I announced in the title of the lecture, about connecting these concepts based on the experience of these two projects: Rethinking, Dwelling, Education, Innovation, and Sustainability. So in a place, in Readwell, there are three sections, three cross-sections we can do to see what they have in common. And in a place, placemaking is a collaborative learning tool that connects students, artists, communities to explore, create, and reflect on the meaning of places through hands-on, site-specific digital activities. This is the educational aspect. In Readwell, the pedagogic aspect is to train professionals to create innovative, real-world solutions for affordable and sustainable housing through transdisciplinary, cross-sector, and community-focused learning. The other cross-section, innovation. In a place, innovation has to do with the integration of art, education, community, digital media to transform how places are experienced, created, and taught. In Readwell, it's about methods and tools to break down disciplinary barriers, support knowledge co-creation, and enable shared learning experiences in both physical and digital space. Finally, the sustainability aspect. In a place is about building socially and culturally resilient communities that are more connected to, responsible for their public spaces, developing also their cultural and social cohesion. And in Readwell, sustainability has to do, of course, with the integration of affordable and sustainable housing. Okay. What is the value of all of this experience for architectural education? If we read one of the latest statements of the UNESCO and the International Union of Architects, we find this declaration as an objective. We feel responsible for the improvement of the education and training of future architects to enable them to meet the expectations of the 21st century worldwide for sustainable human settlements in every cultural heritage. All the keywords are here in this declaration. What that means in practice, our goal is to arrive to sustainability. This is our horizon. Sustainability is difficult to define or to describe, but we can say that it's the ability to maintain or continue a process, a system or resource over the long term without depleting or causing harm. If that's our goal, according to the International Union of Architects, we have to change education. We are not educating architects. If we look at the academic programs, how many academic programs are really oriented towards those goals? It's something that requires innovation. We need to integrate sustainability in education. That requires thinking, requires changing academic structures, requires a continuous process of adaptation. Once we have succeeded in training and having these professionals that the reality, the real world is demanding, these professionals with these skills, like the ones from Livable, will have the capacity to really transform our world in a positive sense, to help to achieve those goals. So innovation is in the crossroads in both directions. Innovation is the catalyst that activates and sustains the connection between sustainability and education, ensuring they evolve together, remain intertwined, and drive meaningful long-term change. Now, looking at this diagram from another perspective, we look at A-Place and Riddle projects, there is like a common territory where the words that are here are valid for both of them. Both of them have to do with lived space, with quality of life, community engagement, with experiential situated learning, collaborative practices, inter-transdisciplinarity, reflective practice, digital innovation. But I would argue that they have also something more in common, which I would argue that is the notion of dwelling. Both of them have to do with dwelling, but in which sense? Dwelling is, we look up to the dictionary, we find these definitions. As a verb, to dwell is to live in a place in a particular way. As a phrasal verb, to dwell on is to think carefully about something a lot of time. And dwelling, as a noun, is a house or a place to live in. By looking at the dictionary, it seems to be clear, but it's not so clear. And actually, Amos Rappaport already 40 years ago made this declaration that dwelling is far from being clear. He tried to define it as a setting or system of settings in which a particular set of activities occur. Learning is one of those activities, one of these systems of activities. Learning as dwelling and dwelling as learning. From that point of view, there are certain implications that come from this connection. We can reinforce in our goal to innovate architectural education, reinforce this aspect, situated learning. Just as dwelling and is grounded in everyday practices, community learning is also contextual. People are learning by doing, but also learning by dwelling. Dwelling spaces are co-constructed over time. Dwelling needs time, as we have seen. Learning beyond academia also requires time. It's not a matter of doing an experimental exercise one semester. In-place learning, as we have seen, happens through and in place. Spaces evolve, and learning has to evolve with those places. And finally, there's an aspect of care and belonging. Dwelling implies a long-term relationship with the place. It's a form of caring. Learning beyond academia is also a form of caring about certain aspects, values. And finally, final slide. What can we do to continue innovating, particularly in architectural education, architectural programs? These are some aspects that maybe have to be in the agenda. To frame courses around complex community challenges, like housing, like climate adaptation, like food, that require multiple disciplines to address. To involve non-academic actors as co-teachers and knowledge holders. To make inter-transdisciplinary sustainable, because that's the other aspect. A project like Livable, it was a 4-year project. Probably has some impact that I'm not able even to trace. But the difficulty from the point of view of the academic structure is to make it sustainable, to learn from that experience, to continue transforming the academic program based on that learning. This is a real difficulty. And finally, integrating teaching and research around projects that blend architecture with other disciplines and with communities. Thank you. you.